It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is one of the most dedicated animal activists that I have the privilege of knowing in Salt Lake. Her name is Tiffany Young. Tiffany Young is a vegan animal rescuer who lives here in Salt Lake City. She's been rescuing ducks and clucks since 2004, first in the Seattle area and now here in Salt Lake. She has a small backyard sanctuary in Sugarhouse. Her focus is on education to prevent school hatching projects, prevent dumped pet ducks, and ensure that everyone knows that bread is bad for ducks. She also encourages anyone thinking about sharing their home or yard with ducks or chickens to be sure to adopt. And I'm sure she's going to be talking about those topics and many more in her presentation. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Tiffany Young.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see if I can get this. I'm not quiet, so I don't even know if I'll need that mic. All right, so welcome to Backyard Chickens, What the Cluck. As he said, my name is Tiffany Young, and I am the director of Ducks and Clucks, my little backyard sanctuary based in Sugarhouse. I have been rescuing for about 12 years. In that time, I have rescued over 200 ducks, chickens, turkeys, geese, pigeons, crows, seagulls, songbirds, and more. Today I'm here to share some information about your backyard flocks, about chickens and eggs, about meat birds and the humane meat myth. It is pretty easy to Google a lot of information on basic chicken care, so that's not what I'm here about. In our time together, I'm going to try to focus on a few of the lesser known stories or the emerging stories in the bird world. Let's get started. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Anyone have an opinion? Who's team chicken? Anyone team chicken? Who's team egg? Which came first, chicken or egg? Team egg, okay. Science has finally solved this age-old question. It turns out a protein that is required to make eggs is not present in eggs, only present in chickens. This protein helps form the crystal structures that make eggshells so very strong and so very lightweight. That means the chicken came first, team chicken. But let's talk about eggs for a minute. I get a lot of questions about eggs. So here are a few basic facts. A chicken will lay an egg every day until she has a full clutch of eggs. The number of eggs in her clutch is really up to her, entirely up to her, but it's usually about 12. A chicken does not need a rooster around to lay an egg, but those eggs won't be fertilized. If there is a rooster around and the eggs are fertilized, they still won't start to develop into chicks until the hen decides to nest full-time. When she gets broody and decides to sit on her nest full-time, she raises the temperature of all of those eggs above 99 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's when they start to develop. This causes them, this is what I find cool, is that an egg laid on day 1 and an egg laid a week later will both start to develop at the same time, so that 21 days later, when they hatch, they all start to lay at the same time. I mean, they all start to hatch at the same time, regardless of if they were laid on day 1 or day 8 or whenever. And that's how she gets all her chicks growing up at the same time. Many people who get backyard hens are surprised when their hens stop laying eggs. I get emails from people asking me how they can jumpstart their hen. But hens are not egg-laying machines. In fact, their little bodies need a break during winter, during late summer when they molt their feathers, and sometimes when they stop laying, it can mean a serious health problem. Chickens are originally descended from red jungle fowl. These wild ancestors laid 5 to 12 eggs in the spring, and sometimes if it's a long season, they'll lay another clutch of 5 to 12 eggs. So that means in a year, jungle fowl will lay 10 to 24 eggs, 24 eggs tops. But our domesticated hens, through generations and generations of selective breeding by hatcheries and factory farms, have been genetically altered to lay between 200 and 300 eggs per year. That takes an incredible toll on their little bodies. Where red jungle fowl can live for 30 years on average, domesticated egg-laying hens live an average of 5 to 6 years. Ornamental hens, like the Cochins or the Polish or the Silkies, can live longer. They can live an average of 12 years. But the egg-laying hens live a significantly shorter life due to the modifications humans have made through selective breeding. And not just factory-farmed eggs, but also the backyard ones, like the Rhode Island Reds, the Buff Orpingtons, or the Easter Eggers. Our avian veterinarian told us recently that more than 1/3 of egg-laying hens will have reproductive cancers by age 3. Many also suffer from reproductive infections like peritonitis or egg binding, or nutrient deficiencies due to laying so very many eggs. One positive note, a recent study has shown that ground flaxseed mixed in with their healthy treats at up to 10% of their diets can help reduce or delay the development of reproductive cancers. So if you do have a backyard flock, that can be a good preventative measure. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit more about backyard flocks. If you've considered backyard hens, you can Google information online, and most of what you find tends to highlight the positive aspects without talking about the downside. I have been rescuing birds for 12 years now, so obviously I think they're awesome, but they're definitely not for everyone, and it's good to know the issues before you fly into a long-term flock commitment. First, where do backyard hens come from? Locally, you might find some on KSL.com or Craigslist. Most people pick them up at Cal Ranch or IFA in the springtime. Those hens all come from hatcheries, and that brings up the first real issue. Ask yourself, well, what about the roosters? Roosters are awesome little guys who protect their ladies, settle disputes in the flock, and keep an eye out for predators. They've been known to share food with their hens and stand between their hens and any danger. Unfortunately for backyard chickens in urban settings, roosters can be too loud. Many municipalities and cities ban roosters completely, including Salt Lake City. But half of all eggs that hatch are roosters. So where do they go? At hatcheries, day-old chicks are unfortunately sent down a conveyor belt for packing and shipping. Line workers pick up the chicks one by one and turn them over and press on each side of their vent to try to determine their gender. If they see the beginning of a phallus forming, that chick is immediately tossed into a macerator. That's basically like a giant grinder. It's tough to find statistics on the number of just specifically backyard hens and roosters in the United States, but for comparison in the US egg industry, which also doesn't have any use for roosters, they kill 250 million roosters each year. That's 250 million day-old baby boys. Day-old chicks are also sent through the US mail to farm feed stores and even to individuals. You can order chicks online for delivery to your local post office. Roosters often show up in those orders, even if you ask for only hens. When hatcheries ship 6 hens to a backyard urban farmer, they sometimes add in another 6 roosters to help them all stay warm on their journey through the US mail. They actually even refer to those roosters as packing peanuts. So in this case, instead of being thrown into a macerator, they're shipped to you and become your problem once they grow big enough to crow. Speaking of roosters, when you end up with one by mistake, there are very few options for him. Every sanctuary I know of in the Northwest US is chock full of roosters. I'm within Salt Lake City limits, so I can't rescue roosters at all. But I get an email about once a week from someone who hatched or purchased chickens and now has no place for the one who turned out to be a boy. Many of these emails describe the roosters as wonderful, sweet, lovable characters who should not be used for food, obviously. Families also get quite attached to their little hand-raised chickens and are heartbroken when a boy must go. They are then faced with the task of finding him a safe forever home. A rooster, since they don't lay eggs, can live longer than a hen, averaging 10 to 12 years. If that rooster eats just $5 of feed a month for a decade that he lives, that's $600 in feed, not to mention treats or housing or materials or vet bills. So someone who raises a chick and needs to rehome it because it's a rooster is asking someone else to take on hundreds of dollars of expense and responsibility for the next decade. A rooster usually reveals himself to be a rooster by 4 months old, 16 weeks of raising a baby rooster versus a decade of needing to keep him safe and healthy and happy. People aren't exactly lining up to adopt these poor birds. As I mentioned before, you can Google a lot of info on basic backyard flock care, so I won't go into a lot of that. You can also visit our website, ducksandclucks.com, to learn about some flock issues. But I'll stick to focusing on some of the new or little-known flock facts. One emerging problem with backyard flocks right now is also a problem for people. Antibiotic resistance affects 2 million people a year, killing at the very least 23,000, according to statistics. These are deaths from infections that were once easily treatable, but are now resistant to treatment as bacteria have evolved. The overuse of antibiotics in factory farming and the increase in antibiotic-resistant bacteria have led to new restrictions by the FDA on antibiotic usage for backyard flocks. It is now illegal for veterinarians to prescribe entire classes of antibiotics to help your backyard hen if she gets injured or sick. This applies to both chickens and ducks, as they're both considered food animals and generally kept in outdoor enclosures. Personally, this has been very distressing for me, as my flock is all rescued and often come to me with issues. I've seen firsthand the limitations they now face in treatment of their ailments, all because of our own misuse of antibiotics. In addition to egg-laying birds and backyard flocks, there are also chickens bred especially for meat. This is something I really didn't know before I became vegan and before I had backyard flocks. You may have heard the term humane meat, where farmers talk about how they give the animals the best life possible, so every day is great and their only bad day is the day they head to slaughter. That sounds nice, but unfortunately for chickens, meat chickens, there is no such thing as humane meat. Why? Chickens bred for meat look nothing like their egg-laying cousins. Just like egg-laying hens have been selectively bred over generations to lay an enormously unnatural number of eggs, broiler chickens, as they're called, meat birds, have been bred to be grossly overweight, to the point of cruelty. For comparison, our new rescued handicapped Cochin hen, her name's Demetra, she weighs 1.8 pounds, just a little ornamental Cochin hen. Our rescued Rhode Island red hen, Laverne, weighs 5 pounds. That's a pretty big chicken. That's an egg-laying domesticated chicken. In the past, our rescued broiler chicken, Toro Roo, weighed a whopping 15 pounds. That's 3 times the weight of an already domesticated chicken. Now, unlike broilers in factory farming, Toro Roo wasn't slaughtered at 48 days old, which is the standard for 98% of all chicken eaten in the US. All chickens used for meat in the US are only 45 to 48 days old when they are slaughtered. They still peep like little babies, and they still have some downy feathers. In 1950, it took 70 days for a chicken to reach a market weight of 3 pounds. Today, it takes just 48 days for them to reach a market weight, which now the industry sets at 6¼ pounds. That's what selective breeding has done. What it means for a baby broiler chicken is that they grow 3 times the normal rate. It's actually distressing to see it happen. By 14 days old, 2 weeks, their heart and lungs have trouble keeping up with their mass. And because the market desires larger chicken breasts and more white meat, the baby broiler chickens are literally saddled with chest muscles twice the size they should be. Their skeletons are also different. Their legs are set wide apart so they can hold up their weight. They can't perch. They never perch like a chicken does. They're unable to perch. And in the meat industry, they're kept in sheds of 30,000 birds apiece on the floor because they can't jump or fly or perch. They look nothing like a normal chicken. They look like little feathered bulldogs or Ottomans or Mack trucks. And even when they're not slaughtered for meat at 45 to 48 days old, they only live an average of 6 to 10 months because of their size and the strain that puts on their body systems. Their little hearts give out, they have trouble breathing, and they can't walk. So when you say a label at the grocery store that says humane meat, remember, it's really a marketing phrase designed to fill consumers' desire to eat more humanely. Many consumers who even aren't vegetarian or vegan do have that desire. They want to live and treat animals better. But there is nothing humane when it comes to broiler chickens. We've made it through some pretty heavy content about our feathered friends. Take a deep breath. But I wouldn't want you to leave here with such a dark view of chickens. So let's lighten it up with a few of my favorite things about hens and roosters. Some people have difficulty relating to birds. They can seem closed off or uninterested in humans. They may seem skittish or uninterested in our attention. But in my experience, chickens are actually more emotional than cats or dogs. Humans just don't often get to experience it. If a chicken learns to trust you, she will invite you into her flock. That is when you will really get to understand how rich their lives are, how emotional and sensitive they can be. Unlike cats and dogs, in my experience, chickens need a lot of emotional intelligence to be part of a flock. They need to understand all the relationships between flock members, establish and maintain a pecking order, and work together to forage for food and keep each other safe. I have been lucky enough to have several chickens trust me over the years. In 2012, I took a summer off of my day job and took a nap in my backyard with my rescued flock of ducks and clucks almost every single day. Within a week, when I was napping, I would wake up to chickens perched on me and talking to me, constantly communicating to me about what was happening in their life. Chickens will trill and purr quietly about every little thing they see. They are hyper-aware and constantly talking. They also love to have their feathers preened, especially since some spots are difficult for them to reach themselves, like their own face. When one of my rescued chickens passed away, Janet, her fellow rescued friend Carol decided that I was her new designated daily face petter rather than choosing another chicken. It was my task several times a day to stroke her face feathers and preen them. She would run up to me and peck at my hands until I pet her face. And if I stopped too soon, I'd get another peck. Carol was one of a kind. Right now I have a rescued chicken named Laverne who walks into the people coop. That's what I call the house, because clearly to her, it is the people coop. She walks in every day like she owns the place. She waits in the kitchen for me to find her a treat, and then she'll take it back outside and eat it on the porch. Lettuces, chopped tomatoes, peas, oatmeal, and sunflower seeds are her favorites. My newest rescue is a handicapped cochin hen named Demetra. She's just starting to talk to me after being quiet for over a week. She's learning to trust that I will listen when she asks for something, and I'm beginning to see joy and determination where she once had uncertainty. Chickens are very much creatures of habit, so changing up something and moving them to a new environment sort of makes everything uncertain. It takes them a little bit of time to understand that they're safe, this is my routine, this is who I can count on, here's where my food is. So it's nice to see her perk back up and understand that she's gonna be okay. If someone calls you a bird brain, take it as a high compliment. Recent research shows that although birds have a brain structure quite different from ours, we were wrong to assume that this meant they didn't have the depth of emotion or a capacity for higher thinking. From a recent New York Times Magazine article titled, "What Does a Parrot Know About PTSD?" we know crows and parrots have revealed that birds think and learn using an entirely different part of their brains than we do, kind of an avian neocortex. Both parrots and crows, in fact, have the ratio of brain to body size that's similar to higher primates, an encephalization quotient that yields not only the indications of cognitive sophistication like problem solving and tool use, but they also have aspects of intelligence long thought to be exclusively human. Episiotic memory and theory of mind, the ability to attribute mental states like intention, desire, and awareness to themselves and to others around them. So chickens just happen to be some smart cookies. Here are 5 easy ways that you can help improve the lives of chickens as you head out into the world. Number 1 is to share this knowledge. If something you learned here today is new, share it with someone you know who still eats eggs or chickens or has a backyard flock. Consider egg alternatives when cooking, from a banana or tofu to baking soda and water or applesauce. There are simple, tasty alternatives for every recipe that requires eggs. There's also the new vegan egg from Follow Your Heart, which I actually really think is pretty awesome. Number 3, consider meat-free alternatives to chicken. Also, very recently there's some pretty amazing chicken replacement products on the market, so there's no reason to have a chicken on your plate. My favorite is Gardein, but Beyond Meat also has a great option that I like. Number 4, if you're someone or someone you know is still thinking about a backyard flock, please adopt. There are rescue sanctuaries all over Salt Lake City with hens who need homes today. Speaking of which, I currently have 2 sets of 3 ducks available for adoption to a safe forever home. You can find us at ducksandclucks.com if you're interested. We have rescued blue Swedes, pecans, runners, ruins, and cayuga ducks that would love to be in a happy home. And lastly, if you can, discourage kindergarten or elementary school hatching projects in your kids' schools. There are alternative cruelty-free learning programs available that teach children more than just how eggs develop. Find alternative learning options that value the entire life of the chicken, not just the first few weeks of egg development and hatching. Thank you for listening to me talk about my feathered friends today. I will now open up the remaining time to